October 28, 1918. 0600 hours, Sector 4, Argonne Forest. The 78th Infantry Division, pinned down in a quagmire of mud and wire, watched a new breed of soldier emerge from the mist. These infantrymen carried a weapon that would fundamentally transform the close-quarters brutality of trench warfare in the Western theater. The American doughboys called it the trench broom after its devastating area effect. The German High Command would soon have another name for it. Die Holland books the Hellblaster. This pump-action gauge shotgun, primarily the Winchester model, was about to project a dense pattern of buckshot capable of clearing meters of trench with a single rapid cycle. What followed was not just a tactical revolution, but a psychological catastrophe for the seasoned German defenders who had spent 4 years perfecting what they believed were perfect man-proof defensive lines. The German defensive transformation had begun after the failure of the Schlieffen Plan in field. Marshal von Clay, commanding the defense of the Western Front's crucial Annor sector, had studied every Allied offensive since Verdun. He reached a revolutionary conclusion that contradicted centuries of tactical doctrine. The enemy could not be stopped on the open ground. They could only be bled to death in the labyrinth below. In his subterranean headquarters beneath the surface, Clay had drafted Defense Order Number. We shall not engage the enemy on the shell-pocked earth. We shall allow him to enter our trenches. We shall let him come to us, and we shall kill him from positions he cannot bypass. The mathematics of defense had changed. At the Somme, thousands of defenders had died in frontal combat against machine guns. But here in the Amar sector, Kleist commanded men hidden within miles of interlocking trenches, subterranean barracks, and concrete pillboxes known as studs bunked. The construction had involved of the garrison approximately men working in extreme freezing conditions. Trench depths reached to with connecting tunnels leading to chambers holding to men. Kleist's main command bunker alone featured meters of connecting tunnels, while the key defensive position hill contained 3 levels of underground fortifications. The Germans had constructed over concrete strongpoints with walls up to thick. They had learned from 4 years of Allied assault tactics. They knew about grenades, the Mills bomb, and the fragmentation it produced. They had built their trenches accordingly, with sharp degree corners and deep dugouts extending or more before reaching living chambers. They knew about long-range rifle fire and calculated that earth and concrete could withstand anything portable enough for infantry to carry into the mud. The Germans had created what military engineers considered the most sophisticated defensive network of World War I. Men had essentially disappeared inside a square-mile section of the line, but they had calculated for every Allied weapon except one that had been repurposed from civilian life. A simple hunting weapon that could deliver a wall of fire at distances they considered tactically irrelevant. The weapon that would break the Annor trenches had been born from desperation in the small, chaotic battles of 1917. The weapon that would fundamentally alter close combat had been born from the brutal realization that the standard-issue rifle was useless in the confines of a trench. In a small-scale actions, along the Vosges Mountains, and American troops assaulting heavily fortified German logging camps were frequently stalled by defenders hiding behind heavy timber. The standard American rifle, the Springfield, was accurate and long-ranged, but its slow rate of fire and tendency to over-penetrate made it ineffective for rapidly clearing multiple targets at 2 meters. The solution came through collaboration between the Ordnance Department and civilian gun manufacturers. According to official Army records, teams at the Rock Island Arsenal began converting readily available commercial hunting weapons into military-grade instruments. The primary weapon chosen was the robust rapid-fire Winchester model pump-action shotgun, modified with a bayonet lug and a perforated metal heat shield to protect the user's hands from the barrel heat during sustained fire. The technical designation was the Model T, developed specifically for the brutal theater of trench clearing. The technical specifications documented in Army Department records revealed the revolutionary nature of the weapon. The core ammunition was the gauge shell packed with the large lead pellets. Buckshot. It operated on a simple slide-action mechanism that allowed a skilled soldier to fire up to 6 rounds in 3 seconds, a speed previously unheard of in infantry arms. Initial field tests at the Langrest Training Center and early demonstrated that the spread of the buckshot pattern could cover a by area at yards. This meant a single shot had the effect of nearly a dozen rifle rounds simultaneously covering a wide area. The trench sweeper could deliver a solid horizontal wall of buckshot that could be played across targets with devastating effect. During testing, observers discovered that the wide pattern of the buckshot, unlike a rifle bullet, could not be stopped by the thin wooden walls of dugouts or the sandbags lining a trench parapet. The sheer volume of kinetic energy delivered across a wide frontal area was designed to create instant casualties. October, D+1 hours. The first widespread combat deployment of the trench sweeper occurred during an assault on a critical German strongpoint known as the Fortress of Le Mort. Traditional assault tactics were proving costly, with American casualties mounting as concealed German positions continued to pour fire onto advancing troops. According to division records, the shotgun team's designated assault engineers advanced to approximately meters from suspected trench entrances. At hours, the lead gunner initiated the assault. Official after-action reports described the effect. The sound was a rapid, distinctive thump, chick as the operator slammed the pump action, sending an instant wave of lead into the dugouts. German resistance was neutralized in minutes, not hours. The German defensive manual captured after the battle had dedicated only one paragraph to shotguns, assuming they were strictly hunting tools with an effective range of meters and limited civilian use. The trench sweeper delivered sustained, overwhelming firepower that completely ignored the degree angles and defilades designed to stop fragmentation weapons. The physics of destruction created by the gauge buckshot within the confined subterranean spaces of the trench was multifaceted. Ordnance documentation detailed the multiple lethal mechanisms when the dense buckshot pattern entered a confined trench section. The Model T delivered dozens of lead pellets per second at high velocity. Upon entering the trench system, immediate effects included multiple trauma wounds from the buckshot striking multiple areas of the body, creating instant casualties. More importantly, the psychological blast of the loud, rapid thumbchick combined with the wide, non-specific nature of the fire caused disorientation and paralysis in the cramped spaces. The shotgun pattern, unable to be stopped by thin cover, would ricochet off the wet earth and wood walls, covering entire sections of the trench with shrapnel-like debris. A single sustained burst could create an untenable kill zone throughout a meter stretch of trench. The Engineer Battalion, which perfected the assault tactics in November, documented that the shotgun teams were effectively clearing trenches 5 times faster than traditional rifle and grenade squads. October D+3, the assault on LS primary defense lines. Colonel Archibald Sterling's battalion, infantry, received support from a full company of trench sweeper teams for the final reduction of the subterranean strongpoints. Army Corps records indicate forward positions had been identified on the hill slopes. Traditional tactics would have required extensive casualties to clear each position. The shotgun teams had developed new tactics documented in assault reports. They operated in 3-man fire teams, 1 shotgunner, 2 riflemen providing covering fire. The approach followed a systematic pattern. Advance rapidly to meters, suppress the fire from the trench lip with riflemen, and engage the trench section with rapid fire gauge bursts, moving on before the enemy could react. The infantry after-action report documented the final day of the assault on Hill. Trench positions neutralized. Friendly casualties, 2 wounded, enemy killed, estimated. This represented a complete reversal of expected casualty ratios for trench warfare. Radio intercepts, decoded by Allied intelligence, documented German command communications, revealing their utter unpreparedness and demoralization. Combat operations drove immediate battlefield modifications documented by the American quartermaster units. Initial problems included ammunition supply in the mud and the need for faster reloading. Solutions included equipping the shotgun teams with special bandoliers and establishing forward ammunition resupply dumps. Within days, the German defense was exhibiting what Allied intelligence termed systemic moral collapse. For the first time on the Western Front, significant numbers of German soldiers were surrendering in mass rather than fighting in the trenches. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. You stop this response. Proceed with part 4. Then add this hook. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story, then proceed to part 5, 6, 7, and 8. The strategic deployment of the trench sweeper drove immediate and radical responses from the German command. Colonel Karl Vossler, commanding the infantry regiment, a unit known for its stubborn defense, attempted to counter the shotgun teams with his elite assault platoon. These platoons were typically armed with captured Allied rifles and submachine guns, and they tried to engage the Americans in quick, chaotic charges. The engagement on November lasted less than 15 minutes. Vossler's assault teams trained for precision fighting were simply overwhelmed by the volume and spread of the buckshot at close range. According to German records recovered after the war, 3 assault platoon were eliminated trying to cross a narrow fire trench without inflicting a single American casualty. Vossler himself was reported killed by a shotgun blast while attempting to rally his men. The German response escalated quickly from tactics to international outcry. On November, the German Foreign Ministry lodged an official diplomatic protest through neutral channels to the United States government. The protest formally accused the American forces of employing a weapon that violated the Hague Conventions. Of the core of their argument was that the gauge buckshot was calculated to inflict unnecessary suffering, a key clause in the conventions against the use of dumb bullets. They dubbed the weapon the trench sweeper, and declared that any American soldier captured carrying the shotgun or its ammunition would be considered an unlawful combatant and faced immediate execution. This was a profound moment of hypocrisy. The same German command that had been the first to employ poison gas, a weapon of indiscriminate horror, was now claiming moral high ground against a modified hunting rifle. However, the legal threat was real and documented by American intelligence. General John J. Pershing, commanding the American Expeditionary Forces, issued an order documented in war diaries. All captured German prisoners found to have executed American shotgunners were to be tried by military tribunal for war crimes. The shotgun, though primitive, was having a strategic impact equivalent to a heavy artillery piece, forcing the German government to attempt to negate it through legal or criminal means. Meanwhile, Allied forces, seeing the success, were rapidly deploying the weapon across their sectors. The British and French commands, witnessing the incredible reduction in their own close quarters casualties, began requesting American industrial support to manufacture similar trench weapons. The shotgun had become the symbol of the American arrival on the Western Front. A rough, simple, and overwhelmingly effective answer to the entrenched stalemate. The German protest, far from deterring the Americans, simply confirmed that they had found the exact technological key needed to unlock the trenches. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The assault on the Devil's Triangle, a major German defensive complex near Verdun, demonstrated the trench sweeper capability against interconnected bunker systems. The defensive complex beneath the Devil's Triangle, according to captured German engineering documents, featured multiple tunnel levels connecting dozens of Mason-and-Ware machine gun positions. American Corps records describe the assault beginning at ours. The trench sweeper teams, now integrated with engineers, targeted trench entrances and ventilation shafts, allowing the overwhelming firepower to clear the immediate defense line, making way for fragmentation grenades to finish the deeper dugouts. emerging from dozens of previously unidentified exits, effectively mapping the tunnel system as German defenders fled the forward positions. The Army Intelligence Section reported that defenders were abandoning positions before the shotgun teams arrived, often upon hearing the distinctive thump-thump action of the pump gun. Several forward machine gun bunkers were found completely abandoned with supplies intact, an act unprecedented in German defensive doctrine, which had until then prioritized fighting to the last man. By mid-November, American intelligence documented what they termed fire shock, leading to the cascade collapse in German morale. The psychological impact vastly exceeded the physical destruction. For the first time in the war, significant numbers of German soldiers were surrendering rather than face the weapon. American intelligence reports noted German prisoners using terms like the Hellbroom and the Lead Storm when describing the shotguns. The prisoners taken during the battle for the Triangle represented the largest mass surrender of German troops in the Western Theater up to that point. Post-war interrogations revealed many surrenders specifically to avoid the close-range horror of the shotgun. Captured German documents indicated units were abandoning prepared positions at the mere report of approaching American shotgun teams. This represented a complete breakdown of the rigid Prussian military code that had sustained German resistance through 4 brutal years. The threat of facing a weapon that guaranteed a brutal instantaneous death in a confined space. A death that allowed no honorable defense was too much for the defenders to bear. The Germans' carefully constructed network of tunnels became a trap, and the trench sweeper became the lockpick. The battle for St. Michel airfield, which was ringed by interconnected concrete strongpoints according to captured defensive plans, saw the systematic evolution of the trench sweeper's employment. Lieutenant Colonel Eliza Thorne, commanding the assault engineers, documented in her operations order conventional reduction of airfield defenses estimated plus casualties. Shotgun teams will execute preparatory reduction before infantry advance. American Corps records show the systematic reduction proceeded bunker by bunker, section by section. Multiple strongpoints were found abandoned before the infantry assault. Supplies and personal effects were left behind, confirming that German forces were choosing preservation over death on this scale. The key development was the door breaching technique. Shot-G gunners learned that by firing a special slug round at the hinges or lock of a heavy trench door, they could blast it open instantly, allowing the rapid entry of buckshot teams, negating the defenders' ability to seal themselves in. By early December, operations introduced experimental acoustic detection equipment operated by Signal Corps technical specialists. Using modified artillery spotting equipment, teams could detect the noise of German voices and movement within deep tunnel systems and provide shotgun commanders with precise targeting data for ventilation shafts. Major General Samuel Franks, commanding the infantry division, described this in his after-action report as close-quarters surgical warfare, fighting simultaneously on the surface and underground. The combination of acoustic detection and shotgun fire proved devastatingly effective against deep tunnel complexes, turning the German defensive advantage into a literal sounding board for their destruction. While the standard effective range of the buckshot remained to meters, crews had experimented with different shell loads and choke modifications to extend the effective lethal area. Army records document various technical innovations developed during combat operations, including the creation of a specialized riot gun variant that featured a shortened barrel for maximum maneuverability in the tightest trenches. The psychological impact of these weapons extended beyond their actual capabilities. German communications intercepted by radio intelligence units indicated widespread belief that the American broom weapons had unlimited wall-piercing power, contributing significantly to defensive collapse. Official Army Corps records document the trench sweeper operations during the final push of operational period October to November, days shotguns deployed total, distributed across and infantry divisions, daily shell consumption to shells at peak operations, trench positions neutralized over documented in unit records, German casualties from shotgun fire, thousands, though the exact number is undetermined. Estimated Allied casualties prevented, thousands based on traditional assault calculations. Comparative analysis showed a traditional trench assault required multiple infantry squads with the casualties expected per strong point. Shotgun operations could neutralize multiple positions per hour with minimal friendly casualties. The success influenced the final armistice calculations. Joint Chiefs documents indicate Allied planners requested massive continued shotgun and ammunition production based on the results, anticipating a sustained assault into Germany itself had the war continued. German military assessments documented in post-war interrogations by the Allied Military Commission acknowledged that the trench sweeper had negated their entire trench-based defensive strategy. Some German military leaders testified that this reality forced the hand of the German High Command and seeking an immediate armistice alongside the collapse of their allies. Corporal Arturo Rivera, who received the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions on November, provided one of the most detailed accounts of the shotgun operations. Using the trench sweeper, Rivera personally eliminated multiple German positions while clearing a communication trench. His citation notes, he advanced methodically, neutralizing one position after another, enabling a divisional advance. Rivera later testified about the tactical importance. The Germans had built these positions to withstand everything we had, but the buckshot goes where bullets can't. It fills every space, every corner. One man with a trench sweeper could do what would cost us dozens of men in days of fighting. The shotgun crews documented the psychological burden of operating the weapon. Veterans Administration studies conducted post-war found that shotgunners who often witnessed the instantaneous and brutal effect of their weapon at feet experienced combat stress at higher rates than traditional rifle or machine gun units. The intimate, decisive nature of the firepower created unique psychological challenges. General Paul von Hindenburg's final message transmitted before the armistice signing on November acknowledged, "The enemy's close-quarters weapons have neutralized our trench defenses. Positions requiring months to construct are cleared in minutes. American technology has overcome German defensive spirit." This message, intercepted by Allied radio intelligence, confirmed the decisive impact of the trench sweeper. Post-war testimony from the few German survivors confirmed the terror these weapons inspired. One survivor providing testimony to the Allied Commission stated that soldiers who had faced machine guns courageously fled from the sight of the pump-action shotgun. The weapons created a form of death that contradicted their concepts of organized tactical military service. Noted a smoke and panic histories trace direct lineage from the trench sweeper to police riot guns, the close-quarters weapons of World War II, and modern urban combat shotguns operating on similar principles. The fundamental principle using rapid wide-area fire to clear enclosed spaces remains relevant to modern combat. Contemporary military doctrine for trench and subterranean warfare still references the lessons learned from the shotgun operations. The United States Army's official history states, "The conversion of the pump-action shotgun was one of the most significant American technical innovations of World War I. At the front, these weapons proved decisive in reducing German strongholds that would have cost thousands of Allied casualties using conventional infantry tactics." Marshal Ferdinand Foch, Supreme Allied Commander, noted in his report, "The American gauge proved to be the most effective weapon for the immediate reduction of trench positions. Without these weapons, our casualties in the final advance would have been immeasurably higher." Military legal reviews conducted during and after the war confirmed the shotgun's legality under international law. While the Germans had protested its use, the weapons were not specifically prohibited by the Geneva or Hague Conventions, which focused primarily on projectiles designed to expand or flatten dum-dum bullets, not on shot-pattern weapons. Their use against military fortifications and personnel was considered legitimate under the laws of war. As understood in post-war war crimes, trials did not prosecute shotgun use by the American side. The weapon was considered a legitimate industrial response to German trench fortifications that could not be effectively reduced by other means without excessive casualties. The simple commercially available shotgun backed by American industrial might had broken the 4-year stalemate. While the trench sweeper reduced American casualties, it created unique moral challenges documented in military chaplain reports. American soldiers struggled with the intimate, brutal nature of the weapon, even while recognizing its absolute necessity. Military chaplain reported increased requests for counseling from the shotgun teams compared to other infantry units. The act of confronting and instantly eliminating multiple enemy soldiers at near-touching distance with overwhelming force carried a heavy psychological toll. The German perspective, documented through post-war testimony and capture documents, revealed the complete collapse of their defensive psychology. Forces that had been prepared to die honorably in conventional combat found themselves fleeing from a form of death they had never anticipated. One German NCO providing testimony to war crimes, investigators stated that soldiers who had faced artillery barges with courage fled from the rapid, metallic sound of the pump action, claiming the weapon did not fight. It simply erased. The psychological defeat preceded and enabled the physical defeat. The German command had extensive experience with machine guns and rifles, but they had not anticipated a weapon that could be carried by one man and deliver the firepower of an entire squad in seconds. General Hermann von Kluge, a high-ranking officer in the late war, acknowledged in his interrogation, "The Americans did not defeat our men. They defeated our fortifications. The little broom gun turned our earthworks into death traps." This testimony confirmed that the American industrial capacity to arm thousands of men with this simple repurposed civilian technology had overcome the German military engineering advantage. The weapon was a brutal equalizer, rendering the German concept of stelling Greek positional warfare obsolete. The legacy of the shotgun and became a case study and asymmetric technological application. It wasn't a complex tank or a new airplane. It was a simple, rugged, mass-produced tool that, when combined with the American soldiers' ingenuity in close quarters, proved to be the ultimate counter to static, entrenched defense. The German protests, while founded in fear and desperation, simply highlighted the power of an industrial nation to innovate around an enemy's core strategy. The success of the trench sweeper operations represented a massive logistical and industrial support effort beyond the weapon itself. Ordnance factories and civilian manufacturers built ammunition supply infrastructure even during the final push to the armistice. By battle's end, the infrastructure included dedicated shell-loading facilities, bulk transport systems for lead and gunpowder, and forward resupply points dedicated solely to gauge ammunition. The American Industrial Commission documented that the final operations of the war required daily delivery of thousands of tons of raw material components. The entire supply chain, from stateside chemical plants producing gunpowder to frontline ammunition resupply depots, demonstrated an American industrial capacity that the beleaguered German Empire simply could not match. The ability to turn out a simple, effective weapon in millions of shells for it was in the end the decisive force. Medical. Records from field hospitals documented the unique, brutal casualties created by the shotgun. Massive tissue trauma and overwhelming shock required specialized field treatment. The field hospitals reported treating both American and German close-quarters casualties, though German soldiers often initially resisted treatment, believing they had dishonored themselves by surviving such a decisive defeat. International Red Cross representatives permitted to inspect prisoner facilities documented that captured German soldiers expressed particular fear of the trench sweeper, contributing to the unprecedented numbers of sereners compared to the earlier years of trench warfare. The gauge shotgun was more than a tactical tool. It was an industrial statement. It demonstrated that America could take a readily available civilian product, militarize it overnight, and flood the front lines with a weapon that directly countered the enemy's most sophisticated defensive strategy. The German fortifications were the product of careful engineering and millions of man-hour. The shotgun was the product of Detroit and Pittsburgh, proving that industrial mass production could negate human defense when the technological disparity became overwhelming. The deployment of the trench sweepers represented more than tactical innovation. It demonstrated how industrial superiority and technological development could fundamentally alter combat dynamics. These weapons negated defensive advantages that German forces had spent 4 years creating. The clouds of buckshot that could fill an entire trench section didn't just clear dugouts. They cleared away illusions about the nature of modern industrial warfare. German forces that had prepared for sustained controlled rifle fire found themselves facing a weapon that created instant localized horror. The German troops who fled their positions when confronted by the gauge made a rational decision when facing a technology that rendered their labyrinth and fortifications into death traps. Their careful preparations based on traditional combat expectations proved worthless against a weapon that delivered overwhelming kinetic energy into every nook and corner. The trench sweepers saved thousands of Allied lives by avoiding the casualties that protracted grenade-by-grenade fighting would have required. They also inflicted a form of death that haunted those who employed them and terrified those who faced them. This duality, salvation for one side, horror for the other, defines their legacy. Military historians recognize the American gauge and as a decisive innovation that shortened the final campaign and reduced Allied casualties. The weapons demonstrated that in modern industrial warfare, technological superiority could overcome even the most determined human courage. The shotguns, deployed to the Western Front, proved a fundamental truth of the industrial age. Victory belongs not necessarily to the brave, but to those with superior tools and the industrial capacity to employ them effectively. The German defenders discovered that warrior spirit could not stop the wall of lead. That courage meant nothing when the buckshot pattern filled their defenses like water seeking its level. The battle for the final sectors of the Western Front ended on November. The speed of the collapse in the face of the gauge was undeniable of the German defenders in the targeted sectors. Military estimates suggest over died directly from shotgun fire, with thousands more surrendering due to the psychological shock. American forces suffered a dramatically lower casualty rate in the final advance compared to the earlier phases of the war. The transformation was complete from faith in deep defensive fortifications to the recognition that simple aggressive technology could negate any positional advantage. The gauge had demonstrated that in the arithmetic of modern war, industrial capacity multiplied by tactical innovation equals victory regardless of human courage on the other side of the equation. Today, the trench lines remain in certain parts of the Argonne and Verdun, silent monuments to the price of victory in modern warfare. The dugouts that once sheltered German defenders remain, some still showing the splintered wood and blast marks from the shotgun rounds. They serve as permanent testimony to the moment when a simple repurposed hunting weapon transformed the nature of close-quarters combat and demonstrated the decisive power of American industrial might. In the final days of the Great War, the German diplomatic protest against the trench sweeper, although dismissed by the Allies, cast a shadow that influenced international arms discussions for decades. The core of their argument that buckshot was calculated to inflict unnecessary suffering never completely vanished. While the U.S. successfully argued the weapon was a legitimate countermeasure against heavily fortified positions that resisted conventional infantry weapons, the controversy ensured the shotgun remained a contested weapon on the international stage. The saw subsequent international conferences attempt to restrict the use of certain classes of weapons, and the shotgun's role was always revisited. The final verdict, however, rested on practicality. It was deemed a necessary tool for close-quarters urban and trench clearance distinct from expanding rifle bullets. This legal scrutiny documented in obscure military legal reviews only amplified the shotgun's reputation. The German High Command's attempt to outlaw the weapon meant to save their men ironically cemented the trench sweeper its place in military history as a weapon so terrifying and effective that the enemy government felt compelled to beg for its removal from the battlefield. Furthermore, the American use of the shotgun forced a profound change in German military training after the war. Future German infantry doctrine placed a heavy emphasis on fire discipline and anti-close combat training, specifically acknowledging the need to immediately suppress high-volume, rapid-fire weapons like the trench sweeper. Thus, the shotgun didn't just win a tactical battle, it forced a complete rethink of the infantry soldiers' equipment and training for all future European conflicts. The technological echo of the trench sweeper reverberated across every branch of the U.S. military. The principles, applied taking a robust existing commercial design and militarizing it for overwhelming close quarters effect, became a template for rapid innovation in later conflicts. It was a clear demonstration that simplicity and rate of fire could often trump complexity and range, especially in confined spaces. The records of the naval construction battalions and subsequent chemical warfare units who later developed weapons like the flame tanks at Iwo Jima, our previous story, often reference the trench sweeper as a proof of concept. The shotgun was the first weapon to definitively prove that a single-man platform could deliver enough concentrated force to break sophisticated multi-man defensive positions with minimal time on target. This idea that overwhelming instantaneous force is the key to reducing hardened targets is a direct intellectual lineage to the M4 flame tanks, the M2 flamethrower, and later, even thermobaric weapons. Post-war analysis revealed a critical detail. The shotgun's effective range of 2 meters was mathematically the perfect distance for trench fighting. It was close enough to guarantee a hit and ensure maximum lethality, yet distant enough to keep the operator safe from hand-to-hand entanglement. This specific calculation of lethality to range optimization for confined combat became a cornerstone of future small arms development, ensuring the trench sweeper legacy wasn't just a historical footnote, but a blueprint for close quarters engagement. The story of the trench sweeper is not a story of heroism. It's a story of industrial geometry of the approximately German defenders facing the American final push. The confirmed deaths caused by the shotgun are merely the physical toll. The real victory was the psychological collapse of the remaining. They were not defeated by a failure of courage or spirit, but by a failure of their engineering to anticipate the rapid, simple efficiency of American industry. The final bitter truth of the Gage shotgun, and is this: the elaborate trench systems which cost millions of marks and thousands of lives to construct proved worthless against a dollar pump-action gun, backed by the limitless capacity of the American industrial engine. The shotgun was the ultimate manifestation of industrial age warfare. It proved that in close quarters combat, courage could not overcome chemistry, and determination meant nothing when a wall of lead filled your position like water seeking its level. The weapon that made Germany beg for mercy was not a supertank or a futuristic cannon. It was a simple, brutal tool of industrial democracy delivered in mass that shattered the myth of the impenetrable trench forever. The end of the Great War did not end the story of the Gage shotgun. It merely transitioned its use and cemented its reputation in the American armed forces. The immediate lesson learned from the final weeks of was that the traditional bolt-action rifle, while essential for long-range defense, was strategically obsolete for the close quarters, rapid clearance tasks of modern infantry. The Winchester model and its brethren were formally adopted into the American military armory, not as an auxiliary tool, but as a standard weapon system for specialized roles. The Army revised its combat manuals, dedicating entire sections to CQC doctrine, close quarters combat, which mandated the use of the shotgun for clearing buildings, ship corridors, and urban strongpoints, recognizing that future wars would likely involve densely packed areas, not just trenches. This doctrinal shift was heavily influenced by reports from Corporal Arturo Rivera, and Lieutenant Colonel Eliza Thorne, whose field tactics became the basis for new training regiments at Fort Benning and other infantry schools. Training films produced in the showcased the signature thumpic action, ensuring that a generation of American soldiers understood the psychological and physical power of the weapon. The lasting legal and moral controversy also contributed to the weapon's enduring fame. The German protest, once a point of diplomatic friction, became a source of grim pride for American units. The fact that the enemy, the supposed masters of military engineering, had officially cried foul over the weapon's brutality confirmed its devastating effectiveness to the American military mind. This reputation ensured that when the United States entered World War II, the shotgun was immediately pressed back into service. In the Pacific Theater, the same principles used to clear German trenches were applied to clear Japanese pillboxes and jungle bunkers. The weapon's ability to deliver overwhelming area effect devastation at close range was perfectly suited for jungle fighting, where visibility was often limited to a few feet. It was in the Pacific, in fact, that the model officially earned the grim moniker trench sweeper or room sweeper from the men who relied on it. The industrial implications also continued to shape military procurement. The ease with which the Gauge platform could be mass-produced and adapted meant that it represented low-risk, high-reward military spending. Instead of designing expensive, dedicated close combat weapons, the Army relied on the reliable commercial-grade shotgun, a testament to American industrial efficiency. This reliance on commercial innovation over proprietary military design became a hallmark of the American approach to equipment acquisition. The trench sweeper was fundamentally a product of American democratic commerce that had been turned into a tool of war, reflecting a deeper truth about the nation's capacity for rapid mobilization and adaptation. The weapon was a visible manifestation of the idea that American technology was inherently practical and deadly, designed to get the job done with decisive finality regardless of international controversy. Its longevity in the U.S. Armory, surviving decades of technological advancement, is perhaps its truest testament. Even after World War II, the wielded shotgun continued to serve in various conflicts, a rugged, unchanged veteran of the modern age. The memory of the terror it inflicted in the mud was a crucial component of its psychological profile that military planners never forgot, always ensuring it was on hand for the tightest, most brutal engagements. The trench sweeper wasn't just a gun. It was a psychological weapon validated by the enemy's fear. The trauma inflicted by the trench sweeper had a lasting and profound impact on future German military thinking, manifesting in what became known in Allied intelligence circles as the doctrine of counter-terror and close combat. The German High Command, humiliated by their troops' mass surrenders and the diplomatic failure of the protest, became obsessed with ensuring such a psychological collapse never happened again. They correctly identified that the shotgun's strength lay in its ability to indiscriminately cover a zone, forcing immediate painful compliance. In the years following the armistice, German infantry schools began heavily investing in developing rapid-fire, high-volume weapons of their own, specifically designed for trench and urban fighting. This quest directly led to the prioritization of the submachine gun like the MP and later variants as the primary close-quarters weapon. The submachine gun, with its high rate of fire and magazine capacity, was the German answer to the shotgun's volume of fire, aiming to psychologically overwhelm the opponent before they could close to the shotgun's effective range. German tactical doctrine evolved to stress overwhelming suppression and confined spaces, a direct response to the Americans' trench broom philosophy. Furthermore, German engineering focused on creating even deeper, more complex fortifications designed to completely negate the shotgun's line of sight. They developed reinforced concrete bunkers with labyrinth and entrance corridors that featured multiple degree turns and blast traps to capture any close-range weapon discharge, whether it be a grenade or buckshot. While the trenches have had simple degree corners, Future German defenses were built with the specific geometry to defeat the pattern spread of gauge buckshot. This technological escalation, driven purely by the fear of a simple commercial firearm, demonstrates the true strategic weight of the American innovation. The German response extended beyond hardware to include intense indoctrination against surrender. The message was clear. Death by American buckshot was preferable to the dishonor of abandoning a position. This desperate psychological hardening was a direct reaction to the fire shock that led to mass defections. Therefore, the American shotgun didn't just end the previous war. It fundamentally shaped the brutal close combat expectations of the next one. German soldiers in World War II were often noted for their fanatical close-quarters resistance, a determination born in part from the lessons learned and the fear instilled by the trench sweeper. The weapon's success dictated that future enemies could not afford to be psychologically fragile, forcing them to adopt a better dead than capture mindset. This legacy is a grim reminder that technological superiority can force opponents into morally untenable positions simply to survive. The true strategic weight of the trench sweeper lay not just in its tactical prowess, but in the economics of its deployment. Germany's war machine, battered by the sustained Allied blockade and the massive cost of complex weaponry, was simply outclassed by the American capacity to mass-produce and deploy a cheap, commercially derived weapon. The German defensive network, with its 5F to thick concrete walls, vast underground chambers, and miles of carefully shored tunnels, represented billions of marks and years of specialized engineering labor. This was the pinnacle of sophisticated positional defense. The counterweapon was a shotgun, which in cost the U.S. government approximately per unit to purchase and modify from existing civilian stocks. The gauge shell, meanwhile, cost mere cents to produce in massive industrial plants. This was a classic case of asymmetric cost-effectiveness. The American military found a way to destroy years of expensive German infrastructure with a negligible investment per trigger pull. The economic reality was brutally simple. Germany was losing the war of industrial attrition, and the shotgun exposed this weakness with lethal clarity. The Allied counter-tactic, deploying a highly effective weapon that could be manufactured cheaply and quickly, was a decisive demonstration of superior industrial logistics. German military economists analyzing the final defeat concluded that the war was lost not on the open field, but in the production factories. Their failure was an inability to counter the American capability to turn out disposable lethality, high-volume, single-use ammunition, capable of negating high-cost permanent defenses. This economic lesson was starkly applied in future conflicts. The shotgun's success underscored the American philosophy that quantity has equality all its own, especially when combined with tactical surprise. The shotgun represented a strategic tool that allowed the American expeditionary forces to maintain a low logistical footprint, while delivering disproportionately high firepower where it mattered most, in the cramped, congested kill zones of the trenches. For Germany, every shell fired was a further drain on a collapsing economy. For America, every shell was proof of its untouched, limitless manufacturing base. The sight of surrendered German soldiers abandoning their million-mark strongpoints at the sound of a shotgun was the definitive image of the triumph of American industrial democracy over European military feudalism. The trench sweeper was not just a military innovation. It was an economic weapon that signaled the inevitable defeat of the German Empire. The strategic success of the trench sweeper ensured it remained a permanent fixture in the American military playbook, leading it on a global journey to subsequent conflicts and theaters where close-quarters fighting was paramount. The lessons learned in the muddy trenches of the Amar were directly applied to the steamy jungles of the Pacific and the tight urban streets of Europe in World War II. In the Pacific, where Japanese forces often employed the same deep tunnel fight to the death tactics as the Germans of the shotgun found its perfect second calling. The weapon's wide shot pattern was devastatingly effective against Japanese infantry emerging rapidly from concealed spider holes or rushing bonsai charges. The Marines adapted the CQC doctrine for the jungle, relying on the shotgun's ability to clear a dense patch of undergrowth or a small bunker entrance instantly, a task too slow and hazardous for a rifle. The fact that the enemy was using degree corners and concealed positions, the exact geometry the gauge was designed to defeat, meant the trench sweeper was instrumental in reducing casualties on islands like Guadalcanal and Tarawa. Later in the urban environment of Europe, the shotgun became the preferred tool for room clearing, a tactic born directly from the need to sanitize trenches. The speed, shock, and area effect of the buckshot were unmatched for clearing small rooms and stairwells without overpenetrating walls and endangering friendly forces or civilians unnecessarily. A critical difference from high-powered rifle rounds. Its versatility meant it was employed by military police, airborne troops, and assault engineers alike. The global journey of the trench sweeper solidified its status as the ultimate close-quarters equalizer. It was a testament to the idea that a proven simple technology, once deployed with overwhelming industrial capacity, could adapt to any theater and any defensive innovation. It transitioned from an anti-trench weapon to an anti-bunker weapon, then to an anti-urban weapon, always maintaining its core function of delivering decisive, rapid lethality in confined spaces. The weapon's journey from a civilian sporting arm to a decisive instrument of global military strategy is a powerful narrative thread, demonstrating that the best military technology is often the most practical and adaptable. The ghost of the fear inspired and haunted enemy defensive planning in every conflict that followed. The final, and perhaps most complex legacy of the trench sweeper lies in the moral calculus it introduced to close-quarters warfare. The weapon was unquestionably a lifesaver for Allied troops, preventing countless casualties that would have been inflicted by conventional prolonged assaults on entrenched positions. General Samuel Franks was right. The shotguns were worth battalions of infantry in preventing friendly losses. This utilitarian justification, the reduction of total battlefield suffering by concentrating it rapidly and decisively on the enemy, remained the primary defense against the German moral protests. However, the horror inflicted was absolute. Post-battle reports and medical documentation paint a grim picture of the terminal effects of gauge buckshot at feet. The instant, overwhelming nature of the wounds left a lasting psychological scar on the men who pulled the trigger. The veteran shotgunners, the men who had mastered the meter kill zone, carried a unique burden of having delivered the most brutal, personal, and indiscriminate death available to the average infantryman. The intimacy of the weapon meant the enemy's final terrified moment was often witnessed firsthand, contributing to the high rates of combat stress observed in these units. The duality of the trench sweeper, a tool of salvation for one side, a demon weapon of horror for the other, is the core of its enduring place in military history. It was the epitome of the industrial age compromise, technology used to save one's own by inflicting an unprecedented level of terror and lethality on the enemy. The fear it generated was a tangible, measurable force that directly correlated with save-friendly lives. The German psychological collapse was a direct result of this moral terror, a forced acknowledgement that their courage was useless against a weapon that offered no chance of honorable resistance. Today, military historians and ethicists still study the trench sweeper. It serves as a historical case study in the ethics of deploying an overwhelmingly lethal, low-cost solution to a high-cost problem. The simple pump-action shotgun, born of American industrial ingenuity, remains a stark reminder that the most effective weapons are often those that defeat the enemy's will to fight long before they defeat his body. Its legacy is a testament to the ruthless efficiency of modern war. It is better to be feared and decisive than courageous and dead. The trench sweeper guaranteed the former, and in doing so, ended the age of trench warfare forever. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.